Can I ask a couple of questions while we're waiting?
Yes, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah. One is going through some things and found I have a whole lot of blank DVDs and CDs, the recordable. Some of them are in packages that have never been opened. Does anyone still use and record blank DVDs or CDs? Secondly, I've got the AirPod Pro, I think it's twos, and I'd like to upgrade to the latest one, which I think are threes, but you can't trade in AirPods. I think it's a health or
Uh,
sanitary issue.
sorry, Bill. Bill, do
Yes.
you have more?
Yeah. Hello? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So
I
anyway,
think
those
there,
were,
Bill, I think, do you have more than one device connected to the meeting?
no. Well, I've got those AirPod Pros in, and they have a microphone in them, right? So I'm on my laptop with the AirPod Pros. What's happening?
I think Bill, let's try to solve this. Let's try to solve this later in the meeting, okay? Oh, okay. So we'll come back to Bill a little bit later. Oh, sorry, folks. I have to turn off the YouTube. Uh, all right.
I
I
think I've
really
got
have to
everything sorted out.
apologize to Bill because that was the YouTube that I had to mute because we're streaming to it.
Okay.
Um, okay, at this time, I would like to turn to Dan Hoffman. And Dan, I'll spotlight you just for this brief time. And again, it's so good to see you. And I think Pi members would be interested in your different exploits. Like, did those the did those remote transport things in Gainesville actually work? You know,
No,
but
no,
so
no.
so tell us some stories. Dan?
There you are.
Yes.
Uh, Technology never quite works the way we want it to, even in this day and age. So thanks, Jonathan, for the invitation. It's been a minute. I appreciate you. I think of all my old friends back in Montgomery County. I think Jonathan has been the most loyal follower of my work since then. And it's been a fun ride. I will say when we first met 12 years ago, 12, 13 years ago, something like that. Uh, Smart city technology was, I mean, it was a new term. I was one of the first chief innovation officers, and not just I was Montgomery County's first chief innovation officer, but I was also one of the first in the country. And at that point, the whole idea of modernizing civic tech using uh, you know the Internet of Things, starting to get people used to working with Arduinos and Pi devices, and just introducing the concept that this kind of technology is it's really accessible to everybody. I mean, we did workshops in my lab in Montgomery County at the the old red brick courthouse in downtown Rockville with kids that were, I think we had a few elementary school kids that were even in there doing basic games, uh, and looking back on how far that's come and seeing how it's a standard part of curriculums these days. The high school that my sons went to in Winchester is it's got an entire lab full of tech that back a few years ago would have been um, pretty much unthought of in a classroom. So I I think about how far we've come and where the industry is now, and uh, the public's level of support for this kind of thing, for public investment in this kind of thing, has been very surprising. It's a very different landscape. When Jonathan and I first started chatting, years back, AI was pure science fiction, and now it's part of everyday life. So it's been an interesting ride over the last decade or more. Uh, Jonathan, any particular topics you want me to cover? You want to do Q&A? I'm happy to do this however you like.
Well, remember reading in your bio that there were some sort of taxis or transport vehicles in Gainesville that was so how did that work?
Yeah. So when I was in Gainesville, one of the nice things about when I was assistant city manager in Gainesville was we had the University of Florida right there. So the University of Florida uh, and the city partnered up to go after National Science Foundation grants. We were the first city in the country to win a NSF grant with a university, and that grant, along with some state money, helped us start researching some autonomous vehicles. We had one of the first autonomous shuttles that operated in mixed traffic. Uh, that was done in coordination with some private sector partners, the state, and the university. Our NSF grant was to use IoT, specifically video as a sensor, to detect harmful or dangerous roadway conditions. I will say one of the things that I was most keen on, going back to my Montgomery County days, was the impact of autonomous vehicles. And at that point, there was a lot of speculation, a lot of optimism that we would start seeing autonomous vehicles within the next decade. We haven't seen that. Much to my disappointment, auto fatalities are enough people die in car accidents every year. It's about equivalent to cancer. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of people die in auto accidents every year. Most of those accidents are human error. It's not mechanical failure. It's not because the brake line, malfunctioned or something. It was because, we're human beings and we did not evolve to drive vehicles 70 miles an hour. We don't have the reflexes that a machine has. So I was very hopeful at that point that, at least my younger son may never have a driver's license, or might not be forced to drive a vehicle, because how stressful that is as a parent when your kids first start to drive. But much to my chagrin, my younger one is now driving a vehicle on his own, and so far so good. But I would say that the biggest part of that, and the biggest part of why that pilot program in Gainesville petered out over time, was a couple of things. The state changed its tone on it, so money started to dry up. And really, the government regulations, trying to get that autonomous shuttle off the ground, required at least half a dozen meetings, trips to DC to work with NHTSA, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, just to get approvals. And the level of caution and fear instilled by, I think, a lot of the regulatory bodies really stymied much progress. And then, of course, there was the reality. And the reality was that the technology wasn't quite there yet. Even that shuttle in Gainesville, if any of you are aware of Florida, Florida has, during the summer, about every day, about 3 o'clock, you get a good torrential downpour that rolls through. Man, in those torrential downpours, the vehicle just would shut down. It wasn't at a point of sophistication that it could navigate in very heavy rains. It could navigate in rain, but it would just stop, and there was no way around that. And it was it was a vehicle built by Via and a company out of France. It was one of the more sophisticated ones of its time, but it just wasn't there yet. What we have gotten, I think, out of a lot of that learning and experimentation were what we currently see in consumer vehicles. Adaptive cruise control. I have a vehicle that when I set my speed, I set lane control, it just goes. I can be hands-free for a couple minutes at a time and it just does its thing. It doesn't operate well in urban environments. It's definitely more built for, uh, environments where you don't have to stop a lot, so highways and whatnot. But the technology is there, and of course, Tesla has always been kind of in the forefront of that as well. But it's not at a point where I think we as humans are comfortable with it yet. We still believe so much in our own driving ability that we don't want to invest in the infrastructure that would be required to make these vehicles safe. So that was a great. Every big project along my career has been a learning experience. They don't all work. That one, I think it worked only in that we learned a lot from it. And we take those lessons, we fail fast, we learn, we move on to iteration number 2.
So can I ask, did those transport vehicles have LiDAR on them?
Yes, LiDAR, and they were impressive. During the demos, as we were trying to convince folks that they were safe, I did videos where I walked right out in front of one that was going, and it stopped. And those vehicles, they're built to always be looking for a reason to stop. Like they will, as a default, if there's something there, it's going to stop. It's going to pause. It's not. It wasn't at a point of sophistication yet where it would take the next step and then navigate around. It would just wait for the lane to clear. But it was, it was a very interesting piece of tech. I haven't seen a lot of those continue, except for the ones that we still see some of those in operation around the US, but they're in very controlled environments. They're not in alive.
They're not in mixed traffic? Oops. Dan, do you want to turn off your video? Folks, I think we lost Dan. Dan, do you want to? He's coming back. You're back, Dan.
I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. Something's up with the internet here at the house this morning, so I've switched to an alternative network. Hopefully, this works a lot better.
It seems better. So
Perfect.
what I was going to ask you, because this is sort of my pet issue, is that Tesla still doesn't have LiDAR.
Yeah.
And when I last asked someone about that, they explained that Tesla's solution is to put AI in it And I said, if all of the low light situations that got the most publicity about crashes were
Mhm.
things that AI can only work with the data that it has.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
I've seen a lot of articles recently where they're starting to say, do we need LiDAR in every vehicle? Whether it's for, I mean, obviously the primary reason would be to improve the autonomy of vehicles, the inherent functions that, folks like Tesla or, I mean, shoot, my Subaru has has a
But
very impressive
in low
adaptive
light
control.
situations,
Yeah,
in
but
low
it's
light situations.
but AI is not, AI is just the brain. You got to have the eyes, and I think until these vehicles have some form of a better way to communicate with the outside world, the idea that we have all these sensors these days. We've got um, vehicle to X, V to X, as we called it. It was, they could communicate with a lot of different stuff. It still can't communicate with the physical, like, road environment, until we start putting, at least some way for the vehicle to communicate with the road and other vehicles around it at least a basic level. It's always going to be, we're always going to have our hands full. And if you rely solely on LiDAR, uh, that's a very important part of it, but it's still, LiDAR is still kind of a, looking through a murky glass, so to speak. It gives, it's obviously, it's way better than just using, distance and some basic forms of, optical recognition, but it's still not perfect until the vehicles actually have the ability to communicate with the vehicle in front of them, to the sides of them, to Jersey barriers, to all of that stuff. It's going to be very difficult. I don't mean to be a pessimist, because when it comes to this stuff, I'm a huge proponent, but uh, over the last decade, I've seen, we as a, society in the US, we're very very cautious anytime we have to open up and communicate, like when our things have to communicate with something else. We've had the cybersecurity boogeyman pounding at our door for, a generation now. So the idea that my vehicle, while I'm driving, may be communicating with the vehicle behind me, sharing a little bit of information with each other, it spooks people, because, people are always concerned. Well, what data are they getting on me? Is it tracking me? Whole Big Brother kind of mentality. I mean, we won't even, we have black box kind of recorders in planes and all other things that kind of record data, send data out. But I'll use the school bus for an example. We have school buses roaming around that, yeah, we have GPS on them now, so we generally know where they are. But that's about it. Like, we don't have, and school buses are carrying around our most prized possessions in the world. You get school kids, and you look at a school bus, it's largely not been updated since, I was in elementary school. It's still the big yellow bus. They've gotten a little nicer, but that's about it. Kids can get it. The fact that if we saw a kid get abducted, van takes off, why wouldn't we want to give law enforcement the ability to just ping and find that vehicle based on a transponder that it has, like other vehicles? We're so focused on privacy and security and how do we secure it, that we often leave kind of law enforcement, I would say, too, with its hand tied behind its back. In Winchester, and actually most cities, most jurisdictions these days, at least more forward-looking ones, they have AI traffic cameras, AI-powered traffic cameras. We have them in Winchester. I have them in Herndon. And we pick up, it's so hard to steal a car and get away with it these days, because the moment that car is entered, there are, I mean, there's probably a half a dozen cameras in Herndon at all the kind of major intersections. Winchester had them at almost every major intersection in Winchester. We could pick up that car almost right away. And honestly, that's just recent. I'm surprised the state of Virginia is still updating codes and ordinances and laws just so that is a feasible thing. And it's not without a lot of government bureaucracy, because there's just this inherent fear that, well, what happens when they want to track me? Which, these days that might sound not so far-fetched, I guess.
Yeah, sorry. Gabe has a question. Gabe Goldberg. Go ahead, Gabe.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, this is very interesting. Here in Fairfax County, they stood up maybe a year or so ago, Real-Time Crime Center, which is a science fiction cockpit at police headquarters with screens all over. And they can look at the cameras, the street cameras, but they can also look at the officers' body cameras in real time. And they can see where all the officers are. They can see where the police cars are. Mm-hmm. And another flavor of the camera are the flock license plate readers. And so besides the video cameras, they're also getting picked up all the different license plates. And far beyond just reading a license plate, the cameras can identify the kind of vehicle, the color of the vehicle, all sorts of things like that. But the interesting thing is that right now, there is pushback on, I'm involved with the police, so I know more about what the Real-Time Crime Center is doing and what the flock cameras are used for. But right now, there's borderline hysteria about especially about the flock cameras. And people are all kinds of upset about data that's being gathered. And exactly as you just said, oh my, they're tracking me. And I've seen reports of how the flock cameras have not just picked up on stolen cars, but they have picked up on seniors who were disoriented and driving where they shouldn't have been. And once the alert comes in, the police can find them. And they have found missing people, and they have solved crimes, and they have recovered stolen cars very quickly. And as you said, the legislation, regulations, procedures are still being hammered out. In Fairfax County, it's being done right. The data is collected, and if there's an alert posted on a car, they'll get a hit. I was on a ride along, and we got an alert of a stolen car very near us. And so in real time, the officer was able to respond to the reported location and then start looking for the stolen car. And so, sure, all of this is dual use technology. It can be used for good or for evil. But what I'm seeing is the positive side of law enforcement using it. And I'm sort of afraid that the pushback will go too far. It's the usual pendulum phenomena. And there's some benefit from it, but there's hysteria and resistance to it. And so I'm afraid I'm just concerned that ignorance will push the pendulum in a particular direction.
Yeah, that's
thanks,
a
Gabe.
big concern.
Thanks very much, Gabe. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, that is a huge concern. I completely agree. I'm in Virginia. I'm active with the Virginia Municipal League and organizations that are, that help advocate and set legislative priorities in Richmond for towns and cities. And, we fought hard, not in the past 2 sessions, to try to get more flexibility on how we deploy and use these things, because there were just a lot of really baseless fear. These systems, they're all very controlled. Law enforcement has access to them. We don't track people. At a real-time crime center we're actually building a new one in the town of Herndon to help complement the one in Fairfax. And, I think what it comes down to at the end of the day is, we all, we're humans. We have ego. That's okay. But there's this sense that Well, I'm so important. Someone must want to watch what I'm doing. Now, if you're doing something illegal, yeah, we would like to catch that. But for the 99% of folks that are just going about their day-to-day life, there's really not that much. We don't have the resources to track everybody. There is no kind of big system like we see. And people have watched too many movies too. There is no big overarching system where we just type a bunch of stuff into a keyboard and suddenly I can see inside of Jonathan's house, or suddenly I'm going to activate his cell phone. Those are that's science fiction still. Yes, can someone occasionally hack into an Alexa device or some other things? Yes. But when they do that, it's under very specific circumstances. It's done when a device is just completely unmanaged and zero thought has been given to some of those controls. And even then, why would someone really want to, right? You probably let the hackers, let the folks in some other way. It's not just because you have the Alexa device that suddenly that threat surface is open, right? You've done something else. You've misused the technology in some way. And we all like to think that, oh, Big Brother's watching, I don't want people to see what I'm doing, but it's so few and far between. And to do that kind of stuff, law enforcement has to go through so many procedures and processes to do surveillance on any particular resident that
Could I get more pedestrian, Dan?
Yeah, sure.
So if we have cameras on all the intersections,
Mhm.
can the cameras tell if there is a pedestrian waiting to cross, or a car waiting to cross a big intersection, or a bike rider waiting to cross?
Great
So the
question.
system can be smart enough to say, we don't have to run the lights for this cross street because there's no one there. Or I would turn it the other way and I would say, if it's not in a commuting time, prioritize the pedestrians
Mhm.
first before the
Yeah.
cars. So is that ability there built in yet or not?
Not yet. A lot of the video as a sensor, and a few of the flock oriented companies, Recore is one of the Recore is one I've used in the past. In Winchester, we had Recore, which was that camera, the camera you're talking about, at an intersection. It was not at a point where it could reliably distinguish between people and bikes. Now, larger things like vehicles and trucks, it was pretty good about. It had been taught, the algorithm had been taught well enough that yeah, you could get it. You knew the color, the make, the model. You could even tell how much they weigh. In fact, some states are going to using that exact same technology to go to automated, what do they call them on the side of the road for the trucks? Weigh stations. Automated weigh stations. All you do is drive through and boom, nothing happens. A camera just looks at the vehicle and says, yeah, it's overweight, it's underweight. But reliably getting down to something that could be used in a safety setting, it's not quite there yet. That was actually a lot of the research University of Florida was doing when I was there for that NSF grant I referenced. Identifying near miss. I mean, that's a huge thing for jurisdictions. Right now we have people manually out, with a clicker watching an intersection saying, well, okay, that bus almost hit that car, or that car almost hit that pedestrian, to determine how safe or unsafe an intersection is. That research was, on its way, and that research was only 6 years old, I would say. Well, it started 6 years ago, so it's probably still getting sophisticated enough where the cameras can start identifying, hey, are the bikes in this bike lane continually swerving out into the lane? are vehicles exiting a lane on a regular basis? Are they missing a stop sign on a regular basis? Because the roadways are dynamic. Their design is not, but they are dynamic. You have potholes that open up. You have trees that their limbs slowly start to block a stop sign. Bikes there might be something obstructing in a bike lane, so bikes are swerving out into the lane. That kind of stuff we should be able to react to before there's an accident. We should be able to know, hey, we've noticed a lot of the sensor over at this road or this intersection. Suddenly, it's the number of near misses has tripled over the last 2 days. We should send somebody out and take a look at why is this occurring.
Maybe foliage just has to be cut back,
Yeah, sometimes that's all it is. Or it's, a box fell out of a truck and it's sitting in the lane and people are swerving around it, that kind of thing. It's not hard. And you can tell remotely. I mean, these real-time centers, you can just go to the camera itself and say, well, why are we getting this ping? And then you can tell in the camera, oh, there was a storm and a limb came down and it's, knocked out a stop sign or something like that. It's pretty easy to identify those things, because you'd be surprised how long it takes. So everyone drives by those things and assumes that the town or city already knows. So they don't call it in. They don't take the time to be like, hey, there's a stop sign missing. A lot of people. There's some of those conscientious folks that, call 311 and say, hey, there's a stop sign that got run over. Or we just wait for one of our police officers to notice it, which sometimes is too late.
What I'm focused on is pedestrian, is giving more weight and ownership and gravitas to pedestrians. So maybe in Herndon, you'll be able to do more with that.
We are, so we're about to embark on a new master plan for downtown Herndon, and pedestrian safety is going to be at its core. And I would say, I mean, in downtown Herndon, the bike community and the pedestrian community is pretty active. They're vocal. We've got the WOD trail that cuts right through the center of town. And I would suspect that we build, in some systems into the new downtown that have, the ability to detect those unsafe environments and hopefully adjust. Real-time adjustment of traffic patterns is something that I don't think the systems are smart enough yet to do. Getting away from the sensor and the sensor side of things. It's hard to do it without keeping a human in the loop, just because these are, life safety systems in a lot of ways. And I don't think there's enough confidence in it to actively say, yes, you can cross this intersection safely based on what the algorithm has told us, or we can retime all the lights. That's pretty typical. Plus, in a lot of these places, and this is more, it's not a technology problem, it's more of a government problem. In a town or a city, you're going to have some intersections that are VDOT. Some roads are VDOT, some roads are town. Do we all have the same tech? Is there standardization? At some point, the industry has to catch up. And I haven't seen any products out there that would allow multiple jurisdictions to, procure and deploy a system like that. But in the coming years, knock on wood, maybe we'll get something like that.
Gabe, go ahead.
Before I forget it, a comment related to what you said before of the car communicating with the world made me think of over-the-air updates and what a terrifying prospect that is, because we've already seen examples of demonstrations of taking control, demonstrating how illicit control could be seized of a car. And the other problem is anyone who's ever had a bad update on an electronic device, phone, computer, and seen it degraded or bricked, might worry about your car being bricked. Or you come out to the car in the morning and it's been updated overnight and the user interface has changed. And all you want to do is drive to the grocery store, and you now have to figure out what the interface in the car looks like. And I've raised that issue with industry people and car manufacturers, and the answer I always get was trust us, it'll be wonderful. And so I don't trust them, and I'm not convinced that it'll be wonderful. So right now I'm happy driving my 2007 Honda Accord with a built-in navigation system, which doesn't communicate with anybody except me looking at the dashboard. And I'm happy. I'm happy with that. And having seen what Tesla sometimes does and then undoes and then reverts, I think that's a whole area of security, reliability, privacy, and the idea of privacy, what the car is disclosing, what the car learns and discloses to the manufacturer and to who knows what else. I'm not a reflexive Luddite, but all of this stuff is unknown. And if you follow the same path as the internet, where it was built, and then they said, well, maybe we should try to make it secure. If they do that to cars, that's a little bit alarming.
Okay, thanks,
Yeah,
Gabe.
Tesla's been a bad example.
Dan, go ahead, and then Ken Nellis is next. Go ahead, Dan.
Gotcha. So yeah, Tesla, I think, really muddied the waters for all the ones that came after that were more deliberate. I had to rent a vehicle not too long ago. It was a very nice Hyundai Genesis, their kind of luxury line of SUVs. And it was super advanced. A lot of VTEX. It would do over air, some degree of over air, but I was thoroughly impressed with the control, not the vehicle controls, but what I'm referring to are some of the internal controls. Like there were certain things that are not going to happen while you're driving. It had a lot of, and I kind of was playing a lot with it while I had it for about a week. So I was playing a lot with the settings and systems to try to see what was possible. I like to try to tinker with things, and I was super impressed. But Hyundai, Subaru, a lot of these companies, they're taking their time. They're being a little more methodical. I think Tesla's gave everybody kind of a bad rap because they rushed a bunch of stuff out. Elon or whoever was in charge of that didn't do anybody any favors by rushing and trying to show off early in the process. So they generated Tesla alone generated so many scare stories that it really gave folks pause as to why they accept it or don't accept it. But the other thing that we have now, that I think when a lot of these systems these automotive OS systems were being developed years and years ago, was how integral the phone would be to that. I mean, what's in your pocket is going to be way more, accessible to threats. It's got a multitude of apps on it. You're using, even if your car is a 2007, if someone's got their phone plugged into and they're using the GPS on that, it's gathering way more data, has way more access to personal information than any vehicle OS is doing. So there's these trade-offs that I think I don't want to call Tesla a bad actor, but some of these companies that were too aggressive in how they move forward, they made the conversation a lot more difficult to have about what is sensitive information, what is not sensitive information, what can or can't be collected, and do we have rules of the road in place? No pun intended. All right, I got time for one more question, and then I got to hop back to some family stuff.
Ken Nellis, go ahead.
Hi, it's sort of a throwaway comment that Gabe made me think of with getting unexpected downloads. I was thinking of Apple putting liquid glass on CarPlay, and then you go in to drive somewhere and you don't know how to drive there. That's probably not a realistic thing. But we did mention, Jonathan, you said something about does Tesla yet have LiDAR? My understanding is they originally did and then took it off to save money. And then there were studies, and they actually found there's more crashes after they took it off, but yet they argued to keep it off. That's all.
It's purely a it was, you're absolutely right, Ken. It was a financially driven decision. And LiDAR at that point too, getting it compact and reliable enough to put on a vehicle, it was cost prohibitive, I would say, which is unfortunate. Again, moving too quickly. You know, the pace of change management has got to be a factor that these companies take into consideration. You know, Apple was super disruptive when it came out, obviously with iPhone, and that changed a lot of the way we did stuff. But then when they rolled out these, you know, some of their first navigation tools, you know, Apple Maps, it was a mess. You know, Google did it more methodically. They were ingesting the right data. They built a tool that, you know, not perfect. None of these tools are perfect. Just like no driver is perfect. But it was a, you know, Apple's another one that they try to advance so quickly. Sometimes I think they trip over their own feet.
Well, first to market is a.
Oh yeah, it is a huge example. And there's no rule, and that's why, you know, when I reference regulations, federal regulations and the like, you know, they're not keeping up in the slightest. And to act like we don't need a Department of Transportation to effectively regulate vehicles and, you know, and accommodate, if not facilitate research, is absolutely ludicrous. Like, that is the federal government's role. No vehicle manufacturer, unless you're the state of California, are you going to start making it be big enough to mandate that vehicles have certain configurations or rule. Like, Virginia is not big enough, much less the Rhode Islands and Dakotas of the world. No one's, you know, Ford and Hyundai and Tesla, they do not care about that element, or about they don't want to be forced to slow down. So this is an area where, just like trains back in the day, the federal government needs to play a role in regulating and, you know, not stopping, but facilitating how these new, what can be life-saving tools get ingested into, you know, our day-to-day lives.
Dan, thank you so much. Can I just leave you that if in your post at Herndon, you get to a place where the intersections are smart, so in non-commuting times, they can prioritize pedestrian crossing roads instead of cars, let me know.
I will. Yeah, if we can pull that off, you know, the Washington Post should be covering that, because it'll be a big feat. But it is, you know, I think my closing thought is, as long as we don't expect the technology to be perfect, as long as we allow for a degree of risk, just as we allow for ourselves to make mistakes, you know, like I said, I think it's 80 plus, almost 90% of accidents are human error. We had a very tragic situation in Winchester. The day after I left my post as city manager there, a 3-year-old was struck and killed in an intersection on our downtown pedestrian mall, right? That intersection's been there for 51 years, never been a problem. Then all of a sudden this tragedy happens, and the first thing people jump to was, well, we just have to shut the road. Like, we have to change all this stuff about the road. What was really hard for people to accept, and even now I think a lot of people don't accept, that there was a degree of human error. It was a fluke, you know, that it wasn't the road, it wasn't the intersection, it wasn't the driver. It was not that driver's fault. And the first thing we want to do is say, well, if only we had this design or this configuration or this tool, it would have been prevented. We gotta accept that we are just flawed mortal beings, and we shouldn't expect our technology to be. And as flawed mortal beings, we're not going to create any perfect technology. So accepting a degree of risk if it's for the greater good, I think is something that we have yet to really wrap our arms around.
Yeah, I think the dilemma really is from the psychologists comes the idea that we actually are willing to give humans a lot of slack when they make mistakes, but we don't have a habit of according that to technology.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. My wife turned off her kind of lane control system in her vehicle, the thing that warns you when you're like drifting out of a lane. She didn't like the vehicle telling her what to do. I'm like, I'm not sure if that's the right way to look at it, but I've heard that so many times from so many people that they turn those features, safety features, off. They're like, oh, I got to fight with the car because it's telling me I shouldn't do it. Maybe it's telling you you shouldn't do it because it's unsafe. Maybe we should listen. Maybe you
Thanks so
shouldn't
much.
be changing lanes without your turn signal. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Does anybody have any last questions for Dan before we let him go?
Well, just to comment on prioritizing pedestrians
Yeah, go ahead, Gabe.
in large cities where the intersections are part of a large matrix, often the traffic lights are timed to optimize
Mhm.
traffic flow, and intersections are not programmed in isolation. They're programmed with their neighbors. And
Yeah.
so it's just a larger challenge figuring out how to prioritize pedestrians at a given intersection without bollocksing the effort that
Mhm.
has been put into optimizing the entire matrix.
Yeah. And that's something that you're absolutely right. And that's why it's going to take a while. The simplest thing that some jurisdictions do, and Herndon does this already, is they just give the pedestrians and cyclists their own cycle at the intersection. We've got right in downtown Herndon, there's one intersection where the WOD trail is that they've got their own. There's a point in the cycle where all the cars are stopped and the pedestrians have to do their thing. There's no right on red. It's just they've got their own time, which is a simple thing that a lot of jurisdictions are doing, especially in these bigger urban areas where they have pedestrian scrambles and things that the pedestrians get equal footing at the intersection as vehicles. It's not always a vehicle dominated intersection. So there's some simple things that can be done, that can be timed in, but still a long ways to go.
Yeah,
All right,
we have
guys.
we have a challenge in that because we have a light rail running through Silver
Mhm.
Spring where I live,
Yes.
and at a big intersection where there's a light rail section,
Mhm.
uh, it's going to be murder for pedestrians to get to the light rail unless there can be a scramble thing
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah. So,
All right.
all
Well,
right, guys. It's
Dan,
been a fun chat.
thank you so much.
Thank you, Jonathan. Great to see you. Keep in touch. Good luck, everybody. Have a great weekend.
All right then.